Hey book lovers, Lori here. I'm back to do another video. So this is a video I've actually been thinking about doing for a while. And I'll be honest, this is a video that or an interest of mine that kind of started during the pandemic because I had a little bit more time on my hands and I wasn't running around like a crazy person. I normally did not read a whole lot of nonfiction. It was not a genre that I felt gravitated towards. But in the past couple of years, I would say since I stopped going to grad school, and I I went to school for a lot. I went to college for many years. I wound up with 3 degrees. I just sort of miss it. And once the pandemic started and I had a lot of downtime, especially over the summer, I got into audiobooks a lot and also nonfiction reads a lot. And I've had so many entertainment books on my TBR that I've wanted to read that I just have not got around to for various reasons. So I'm going to challenge myself a little bit and I'm going to make a nonfiction TBR in a couple of different categories to just kind of challenge myself to diversify my reading life a little bit. I did talk about in my goals video in 2021 I definitely wanted to read at least 12 nonfiction books in a year. I think I want to try to enhance that a little bit. What I have noticed about myself is when I'm doing errandy stuff or when I'm doing grading or when I'm doing other things and sort of like as busy work when I have to put grades in or when I have to plan stuff, I always or when I even set up my blog or when I set up my YouTube channel, whenever I do little things, I always put on background noise. And the background noise I typically choose is true crime YouTube videos that I've watched legit 1,000 times. And it just seems a little bit counterproductive. Even when I'm getting ready in the morning or when I'm working out, or, if I have because I've been doing, since gyms have closed, I've been doing Daily Burn or Mad Fit. I've always just had these true crime videos in the background. When I play Animal Crossing, I just have these true crimes in the. So, what I'm going to try to do is I'm just going to try to cut them out. I'm only going to watch the new ones and I'm not going to rewatch anymore because it's just not engaging me mentally. It's not giving me any new information that I don't have. So, yeah, I have quite a long list. When I'm done with this video, I'm going to go put them in my bullet journal so I'm held myself a little bit accountable. But I sort of split these into a couple of different categories politics or worldview, which is the category that I've been falling into a lot recently. I've been reading a lot of those, just the nature of the times that we're in, especially in the aftermath of the 2020 election. I've been really engaged in that. Also, lifestyle and productivity is one, and habits is one that I really want to learn a little bit more about and try to push myself and challenge myself a little bit. Especially I want to read those before the summer because the summer I have a lot of free time because I'm off. I'm a school teacher, and I have a little bit more time to devote to some new things. But also there are some entertainment ones that I have heard about for years and just never given the time. So I want to try to set up a plan of attack for the summer, and I'll probably do it before the summer. But just to sort of be a little bit more successful in my habit life. So yeah, let's get into it. This will be sort of a longer video. I'm going to show you guys pictures and tell you guys what I know about these books if I know anything. But yeah, let's get into it. The first book I'm going to chat about is quite long. I'm definitely going to listen to the audiobook for this one, but I'm really excited to dive into it. And that's Promised Land by Barack Obama. Here will be a picture. I'm in my early 30s, and the first president that I remember really having a big consequence on my life was Barack Obama. He was in the presidency when I was in late high school, early college, and I just remember him having a very big impact on my life. But it wasn't until the 2016-2020 cycle that I really got really lasered in on it. So I was just not paying attention to his presidency that closely until the very end. So I want to kind of go back and look at his early years and see what he thought about it and see what led to him to make all these decisions. And I think that will just be a really interesting read. I also really like his speaking voice, so I'm going to definitely add that as an audiobook for my listening experience, and really am excited to dive into it. It should be fun. I've heard some great things about it, and I heard the audiobook is really good, so that's why that's on this list. The next book is a book that I'm actually in the middle of reading, and that's Lead from the Outside by Stacey Abrams. is the one that I'm in the middle of reading right now, and it's really an interesting look at how Stacey Abrams got to where she is before her governor campaign. Um, this is like written before that, but then there's another book I'm going to read. I'll talk about that next, that I'm going to read next. But I really love her. I love how she talks. I love her life story. I love her writing style. I love listening to the audiobooks that she wrote. She's actually like a romance author, which I didn't know, and I actually got a couple of books. But these nonfiction ones are one that I'm really interested in diving into because it just shows what you can do with what you can do, what you can aspire to be, and I really, really enjoy that. I really like her advice. That I feel like her advice could really, really fit for anybody, whatever job you're in, whatever career you're in. It's very, very inspirational, but there's also like tactical points of like response, like what you can do in these situations, and I really enjoy it. And even though she is talking about politics and stuff like that, I feel like her advice can really go everywhere, go for anyone and anywhere. Then the next book that she wrote is called Our Time Is Now, and this is written, I think, after she lost the governorship in Georgia, and it's sort of an aftermath of that, which I'm really excited to reading that one as well. And here's a photo. The next book I'm going to chat about is definitely one that I did not know of before the 2020 election, and that is Enemy of the People by Jim Acosta. He, for those that don't know, it used to be the senior White House correspondent for CNN, and I think in like 2019 or 2018, his credentials were stripped for asking questions Trump didn't like, and this is sort of his story, and I think reporters and political people and people trying to tell the truth in the 2016, like the 2016 to 2020, their stories are so fascinating. I definitely started following more journalists in this time period because I think that their job is incredibly important. And this is a book that just really interests me. So here's a photo. Own show on CNN, but I thought he was so well spoken during the the cycle where he was that chief White House correspondent, and I really am excited to read his book. The next book I'm going to talk about could be kind of conceived as like not a political one, but it is written by our new first lady, and that is Jill Biden's memoir. The photos here. Sort of a twofer because Joe Biden did write a book called Promise Me Dad, which I am in the middle of listening to. I know that one will be a little bit of a harder read because it does deal with the death of his son. Um, but I do want to read it. And this one, I think, is called Where the Light Enters. And this is also Joe Biden's story about the aftermath of Bill Biden's death. And I think they're both going to be very, very impactful reads. But I just like them. I just do. I just like them. I think that they're really awesome people who have been through a lot of trauma in their lives. And I just think I like reading about people and how they survive these gut wrenching experiences. And they're both so eloquent and so well spoken. So I'm really excited to dive into these. These will definitely be harder reads. I will say that. And I'll probably listen to the audiobooks. But I'm really excited to dive into them. The next two are definitely going to be harder reads, and one is called Bring the War Home. And this is a book that explores the white power or the white supremacy movement and how that has affected America. It's going to be a very, very hard read. I'm sure I'm going to get angry when I read this book, just like I got angry when I read So You Want to Talk About Race. I was like wanted to throw my iPod across the room. But I'm sure that this will just educate me more because that is not a topic I am very, very familiar with. I know vagues, but I really want to know a little bit more specifics about it. So I'm actually excited to dive into this one and educate myself a little bit more. And that's really what this section of it about is just I'm learning about topics that I really don't know a lot of information about or we were never taught in school. There are quite a few on this list that I just didn't know existed until this election cycle or this past 4 years. So just a little bit more about educating myself. But this one is definitely one of those. There's another like political themed memoir, and that is The Threat by Andrew McCabe. He was the acting, I think he was the acting something in the early ages of Trump, and he sort of dealt with the early start of Trump's presidency and was eventually fired by Donald Trump. And again, I've heard him speak a lot in the aftermaths of January 6th, and I just want to read about some more political stuff from his point of view because he was involved in national intelligence. And I just think it would be fascinating. There's a lot more of this type of book on here, but I'm going to start with this one and then work my way backwards. There's one by James Clapper that I want to read. And there's a couple of other ones in national intelligence one, but this is the one that I have my eye on immediately and the one I want to read first. The next two books are both written by one person, but they are both by Pete Buttigieg, who was the presidential nominee, or one of the presidential nominees for the 2020 election. He was also the mayor of Indiana, and he also recently got confirmed as the Secretary of Transportation for the Biden administration. And these books are sort of following his political career, and I want to read them both. I'm probably going to start with Shortest Way Home because Coffee, Books, and Bullet Journals, I really enjoyed that one. But again, I put them both on my list. Here are both the photos, and in the past like couple of years, I've just become very, very narrowed in on politics, and these are just some voices that I just want to hear more of their thoughts about their lives and how they progressed. He's also an LGBTQ gentleman, and he is the first LGBTQ cabinet member, I think, which is crazy that it's 2020 and that's just happening now. But I just really want to hear more about his life. So these are two books that are high on my nonfiction read list. The next book is sort of a funny one, but also sort of a serious one. And it's sort of funny because it's written by Amber Ruffin, who has her own show on Peacock now, but is also or used to be, or maybe still is, a contributing editor on The Seth Meyers Show. And her sister wrote a book, You Won't Believe What Happened to Lacey. So here's a photo. Right in the aftermath of the George Floyd protests and stuff like that and everything that was happening, Seth gave her a platform on his show. This is before her show came out, and she had a series where she just talked about racist incidents she experienced in her life, and it was so impactful to just hear her speak about it. So I'm really excited to dive into this book and just learn about more from the world through her experience. And I think that that's really important. She's also so funny. Her sister is so funny, so I think that it will be sort of a funny read, but also give me a look into another person's life, which I'm really excited about. But yeah, she's great. If you haven't checked out her on those little clips or on her own show, I would definitely recommend it. But I'm definitely excited to dive into this read as well. One that I literally just heard about yesterday, but it's called Silent Spring, and this is the first climate change book that really like started that whole focus on the environment. And I've always wanted to read more books about climate change, and I think that this is like a good place to start, and then I'll kind of dive into a few more topics. Super Space Chick gave me the recommendation for this one. It wasn't even on my radar, but now that I know that it exists, I definitely added it to my list, and hopefully I can read it soon because this is a topic that is very, very close to my heart, and I just want to have a little bit more information um, as tools in my toolbox when I have discussions with people. So this is one that I'm really excited to read as well. Books are definitely political memoirs, but one is written by Kamala Harris, and it's called The Truth That We Hold, and it is her life leading up to her being a senator, I think, and I'm really excited to dive into this one. This one's been on my TBR for quite a while. And also Joe Biden by Evan, I don't know his name, Evan, but he was on the inauguration crew for CNN, and I had listened to him talk, and I just want to sort of hear about Joe Biden's life from his point of view. It's very, very short, though, as well. And that will kind of go hand in hand with my other Joe Biden book that he also wrote. But I just like hearing about political figures through other people's lives, and normally you have like a biographer that follows you for many, many years, and this is what I think that this young man does. So I'm really excited to dive into both of these books, but here are photos. And the last book in this little section is the original Watergate stories, written by Carl Bernstein and Bob Woodward. They are the two journalists that were heavily involved in the Nixon administration. And I read Bob Woodward's books about Trump in late 2020 and really like them. And I've heard these men talk so much in the Trump years about the Trump presidency. So I'd love to hear their thoughts about the Nixon administration. They have like a couple of books, but this one was free on Audible, so I decided to get this one first. And then if I really want to dive into more, there's a couple of other ones that they've been. There's like All the President's Men, and then there's The Last Days of the Nixon Administration. But I'm going to start with this one, see how I like it, and then dive farther if I want to. So, about a couple of like the routines or like the habit books I want to read. I only have a couple on here. I think it's like two and one creativity one. So yeah, let's get into it. The next book is actually the one that I'm going to tackle, I think, during my next week off, and that is Atomic Habits. Here's a photo. Skillshare. I was listening to a lot of productivity videos and I heard about this book over and over and over again. I actually bought it from Target, so I actually have a physical copy, which means I think I'm going to probably wind up physically reading this one during my next week off, and I'm going to kind of take a couple of chapters every single day and just kind of do that. I did that over the summer and I found it to be super successful. Um, so that's another one that I'm really excited to dive into, and I hope that it is effective in helping me at least become more knowledgeable of how to build habits, because I think that that's something I've been struggling with, especially during this pandemic year where everything has kind of been turned on its head. Is The Power of Habit, which is another very, very popular habit creation book, and I'm really excited to dive into this one again. It's one that I've had on my reading list for a while, and I just haven't got around to it. I hope to tackle this one before the summer. That is a goal, and I'm really excited to see if it will give me any insights that I seem to be lacking and able to make some changes in my life in the future. Start of another section that I'm going to tackle over the summer, because we have had our shows shut down because of the pandemic. I haven't put up a show in like 2 years, and I'm just feeling a little bit less creative than I would like to be because I don't have that outlet. So I'm going to add some more like theater based books to the summer to my reading list. But this one is just sort of one that is going to kind of me to learn a little bit more about tackling my own issues with perfectionism, which I noticed a lot when I put up my first show of Willy Wonka. If you've been following me for a while, you know that show was really, really hard for me to do. It was probably one of the most challenging things I did with my life, and I suffered with perfectionist a lot. And during that show, I was such a perfectionist, it really inhibited me a little bit. And this book is Your Inner Critic is a Jerk, which is basically what I feel like my inner critic is. So hopefully this book that I learned about from a Skillshare class will kind of open up my eyes to kind of, not focusing on that negative voice in my head a lot. And I hope that this will be helpful. And then after this, I will kind of dive into some more creative reads over the summer. And I will definitely give you guys a reading list if you guys are interested about that closer to when the summer is. A few more months. The next section is the one category of nonfiction that I haven't really read, I'll be honest, and I have so many of these on my list, and they are the categories of nonfiction, entertainment, memoirs, but also just books about TV and the entertainment industry in general. Quite a few of these on my list. One, I even have a physical copy of. I have heard about this book for like at least like 7 years. It's called TV the Book. Two experts pick the greatest TV shows in America. And I heard about this from Brittany Lovely, who is like on one of my podcast groups that I listen to. She's on Rewatchables, she's on Not About the Weather. And I literally have had this book on my TBR for like years, decades even. So I'm really going to make it a mission to just tackle this one, 1 month, because it's like, they talk about The Simpsons, they talk about Breaking Bad, I Love Lucy, Smash, The Twilight Zone, and they talk about a lot of different popular shows. And I just want to really just like take it and just read about these classics and then decide if I'm going to watch these classics TVs shows. But I've just had this book for so many years. This is one that I really do want to read. I might even get the audiobook. We'll see, but I do have a physical copy. So this is one that started this whole section and I still have not read it. The other one that I'm actually in the middle of reading is the Pixar book, Creativity Inc. Starting off of Pixar, which I think is such a creative company, so I really am liking this one. I started physically reading it. I might wind up changing over to the audiobook eventually, but I really am liking that one. And then the next one I also heard about from Super Spacious is I Like to Watch. Here's a photo. Book written about like her relationship with TV. She's like a TV editor, and I've find those jobs to be super, super cool and super interesting. So these are just the start. I mean, I'll show you guys my bullet journal. I have about quite a big list. I don't want to overwhelm myself because then I feel like this list will never get done. But then, like, hopefully in the next year, I can tackle at least maybe like 5 or 6 of them by the end of the year. That would be a goal. 5 or 6 in like each section, and I think I could do it. I just hopefully taking away that like rewatch of like entertainment stuff or like older true crime stuff will kind of give me a little bit more time to kind of dive into some new material. Definitely a goal, definitely a challenge, something I'm gonna actually really focus on in this month and next month. I'm gonna actually make it a priority. But let me know if you guys have any goals for 2021 in the nonfiction read area that you want to try to tackle, and I'll talk to you guys for my next video.